These events actually happened. What occurred in the past was not mere fiction. Researchers in France confirmed these accounts in their writings. But surprisingly, this wasn't an isolated incident. Strange practices, terror, and bizarre ointments were widespread at the time, leading to the conclusion that the phenomena depicted in horror films are not just myths. They truly occurred. It's a mysterious, terrifying, and controversial topic all at once. Werewolves are individuals who literally transform into large, vicious, bloodthirsty wolves. This transformation is attributed to several causes. The most famous in legend, which most of us know, being a bite or scratch where the blood of the transformed mixes with that of the victim. The hereditary factor also plays a role, as some stories and films depict the transformed as being born with this trait or ability, which typically only manifests upon reaching puberty. Ancient stories and legends introduce the element of magic and curses into a person's transformation into a werewolf. The stereotypical image of immense size, ferocity, and strength perfectly aligns with the male figure, which has historically confined the transformed to the male community. Although some stories have introduced the female factor, albeit rarely, transforming into one is no easy feat. According to films and stories, which most of us are familiar with, the person undergoing the change experiences unbearable pain. Their bones break, mend, and stretch to their new size. The person becomes naked, covered in dense hair, with sharp fangs, and completely devoid of reason. And, of course, most transformations only occur under a full moon. Their demise is usually brought about by silver bullets, exclusively, in addition to burning them. Most of us are aware of these details from watching numerous films featuring them or reading stories or novels about these legendary creatures, if they can be called that. It was a terrifying, horrifying, and mysterious phenomenon. The people of that era lived in real fear. From dusk till dawn, a pervasive terror surrounded them, claiming their children and young women. When night fell, everyone hid. The number of missing persons strangely increased. Some vanished without a trace, while others were found, but only as scattered remains and bones. More horrifying was the swift retribution. The locals were certain, leaving no room for doubt. These weren't ordinary people. They had surrendered their souls to sorcery and demons, and perhaps, just perhaps, they reaped a deadly reward. The werewolf, a legend we all know, and many wish to uncover its origins and the truth behind it. But is there an explanation? This topic has sparked and continues to spark debate wherever it's mentioned. A subject where reality blends with fantasy. It's one of the most frequently discussed themes in horror, thrillers, and even romance. They are humans, yet not entirely human. Wolves, yet not entirely wolves. Ancient legends introduced us to them, and horrific crimes were committed in their name. Scientific explanations have linked this phenomenon to diseases and genetic mutations, and research continues. Focus entirely. For tonight, we will delve into the world of the transformed. Are you ready? The transformed, or werewolves, represent one of the most famous subjects explored in novels, stories, and films throughout the ages. But did you know that the transformed aren't a product of modern or even medieval times? Their existence and their stories date back much further, specifically to pre-Christian eras. The same story was recounted in more detail by the ancient Roman poet in his famous epic, Metamorphoses. For them, the matter was directly linked to magic, sorcery, magical arts, blasphemy, and the selling of one's soul to the devil, naturally. The mention of werewolves continued in stories and novels. For example, the Book of Werewolves, published in 1865, traces the mention and existence of these creatures throughout history. Also, a novel published in 1928. Although details are scarce, introduced the female element by making the protagonist a transformed woman, of course. Many other novels and stories were later adapted into films that flooded cinemas and television screens. Some of these films are based on real stories, sightings, and events recorded in historical texts concerning cases labeled as lycanthropy. Many sightings and real cases of individuals who were executed for being considered werewolves. Pay close attention, for these historical sightings and events are our next stop in the story. The god Zeus, god of the sky and thunder, visited King Lycaon of Arcadia disguised as an ordinary man. Perhaps the most famous is what was covered in a certain episode about the Beast of Gavorden, a creature that terrified a French town and was directly linked to the transformed. But the story of the beast is not the only known incident concerning these beings. Historical sources have extensively detailed such occurrences, most of which took place between the 16th and 17th centuries. A period that witnessed widespread panic due to acts of magic and sorcery. Many trials were held for individuals accused of practicing magic and sorcery, and the same applied to those proven to be werewolves or vampires. All of these were considered products of magic, according to the beliefs of that period. Of course, many people unjustly met their demise in what was called the witch hunt. Conversely, some individuals, specifically concerning werewolves, were genuinely guilty of heinous crimes, and society was entirely convinced they were werewolves, based on their own confessions. The king suspected this strange guest was one of the gods, and to confirm his suspicions, he slaughtered a child he held captive and offered its organs to the god. Zeus learned of the sacrificial child and became intensely enraged, subsequently transforming the king into a wolf. He also recounted a story of an Arcadian man named Democritus who, after eating the entrails of a child offered as a sacrifice to Zeus, transformed into a wolf for 10 years, only to return to his human form afterward. The reason, according to ancient legends, was that if the transformed abstained from eating human flesh for 9 years, they would return to their natural form in the 10th year. In one of the most famous Latin prose works, written by the Latin author in 60 AD, we also find a description of a man's transformation into a wolf. According to the book, one of the characters, named Naceros, describes the transformation as follows. When I looked at my friend, I saw he had taken off his clothes and put them in a pile. Then, if you'll pardon the expression, he urinated in a circle round his clothes, and then suddenly transformed into a wolf, beginning to howl and run into the forest. According to many sources that have explored this topic, it is impossible to pinpoint the first mention of the transformed in general, but the earliest known mention or allusion to human-to-wolf transformation appeared in the legendary Epic of Gilgamesh dating back to 2100 BC. In this epic, a passage describes Gilgamesh refusing to become a lover of the goddess Ishtar, abandoning her after she had turned one of her previous lovers into a wolf, making him an enemy to his friends, his flocks, and even his dogs. However, a clear and explicit mention of what we know today about the transformed dates back to the father of history and one of the greatest and most famous historians of all time, the Greek historian. He mentioned a tribe called the Nuri who lived northeast of the ancient Scythian kingdom. This tribe, according to the historian, would transform entirely into wolves for one day each year. The tribe would remain in wolf form for several days before returning to their human appearance in the 2nd century BC. The famous Greek geographer and traveler Pausanias recorded the ancient story of King Lycaon, who was transformed into a wolf for sacrificing a child in the temple of the god Zeus. Many early Christian writers also mentioned the subject of transformation into a wolf in their writings. Numerous sightings, reports, and events have been recorded in historical documents regarding the transformed. Let's start in 1521 with two Frenchmen. They were arrested and tried for sorcery and witchcraft. During the trial, the men confessed, according to sources and historical records, that they had sold their souls to the devil, who in turn rewarded them with a magical ointment capable of transforming them into wolves. This man also claimed to possess a magical ointment with the supernatural ability to heal wounds and bruises. Not only that, but this ointment could also transform him into a wolf. He claimed responsibility for a number of serial murders and disappearances at the time, also claiming he possessed a magical skin that transformed him into a wolf when worn. In the summer of that year, a small boy was found living alone in the forests of northern Germany. Most who saw the boy or heard his story were convinced he had been raised among a pack of wolves. The boy could not speak, only howl, and he ate with his hands, refusing to sleep anywhere but on the ground. The story of this boy reached King George I, who sent for him to the royal court in England. There, the boy was baptized according to Christian teachings and named Peter. Persistent attempts were made by the king, his advisors, and subsequently King George II, to teach Peter to speak in proper manners and eating habits. But all attempts were in vain, earning him the nickname Peter the Wild Boy due to his embarrassing behavior and inability to adapt to life at the royal court. He was sent to live on the outskirts of England until his death in 1785, leaving the secret of this boy from the forests a true mystery to this day. Does this segment remind you of anything? Yes, the famous animated series and film The Jungle Book, Mowgli. It seems that what we watched in our childhood was, in the end, based on a true story. Strange indeed. Of course, researchers and scholars believe that Peter's condition was nothing more than what is now known as Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, or a neurological disorder causing learning difficulties and an inability to speak, facial deformities and breathing difficulties first discovered in 1978, and that all the crimes he committed were during the period when he transformed into a wolf. The boy's story roused great interest, and he was indeed arrested and heard by a committee of jurors and judges. In the end, the court ruled that the boy was insane and mentally incompetent, and he was placed in a monastery specializing in such cases. It's worth mentioning that France alone, between 1520 and 1630, recorded over 30,000 cases of either claiming to be werewolves or seeing werewolves. It seems the phenomenon was very widespread at the time. It seems the idea of magical ointments was very popular then, wasn't it, as with those who came before him in his transformed state. Gilles also killed and ate children, and of course, he was burned alive as punishment for his horrific crimes. When they transformed, the men would roam the streets of the French town, lying in wait for their prey, who, unfortunately, were children. The accused was a wealthy farmer and landowner named Peter Stubb. This man terrorized his town. For many years, residents would wake up to the horrors of his nightly crimes, an unknown beast. Killed men, women, and children. Many patrols roamed the alleys searching for the culprit, but to no avail, until the first clues to solving the mystery began to appear. According to National Geographic, one of the search and guard patrol members engaged in a struggle with a terrifying, large wolf-like creature and severed its front left limb before the beast fled into the darkness. In the following days, no crimes occurred, and the town experienced no panic or terror. The beast, it seemed, was severely wounded by the courageous god, the same god, in the days following his encounter with the mysterious creature, happened to meet the wealthy farmer, Peter, but something strange caught the guard's eye. Peter's left hand was severed. Does this remind you of anything? Yes, exactly the same injury the god inflicted on the mysterious creature. Of course, the god asked Peter what happened to his hand, and Peter told him he had cut it in an accident on his farm. The answer, it seems, did not convince the god, who then shared his suspicions and what he had witnessed with his companions. As a result, the young men monitored Peter until the night he left his home to hunt. The young men saw with their own eyes, as recorded in historical documents, Peter's transformation into a wolf, and then his return to his normal form. They then surrounded him and arrested him. During the trial, Peter confessed that he had made a pact with the devil, who in turn granted him a magical belt that would transform him into a large wolf when worn, of course. No trace of the belt was found. According to historical sources, Peter also confessed to killing approximately 25 people and eating their organs, most of whom were children. Peter's trial is considered one of the most horrific trials ever, as many historians and researchers, according to the National Geographic article, believe that the man made his confessions under the severe torture he endured, and that Peter was merely mentally ill, a condition unknown at the time, making him a suitable target for witch and werewolf hunters. He ended up bound to a wheel, his skin flayed while he was still alive. It didn't stop there. His bones were completely broken. Then he was dismembered and his body parts burned after being hung on a stake. As a warning, his head was impaled on a pole in the center of the village or town. Truly terrifying, isn't it? The men confessed to killing a number of children, drinking their blood, and eating their organs. They were subsequently tried and burned at the stake, the method used to kill werewolves at the time. Moving to 1573, also in France, this time with a man named Gilgamesh. We shift from France to Germany, specifically to the town of Bedburg, in one of the most famous stories of the transformed and their trials ever. Moving to 1603, this time the protagonist is a teenage boy named Jean Grenier. By 1725, the subject of werewolves had begun to decline, but the appearance of a small boy who walked on all fours brought the topic back to mind. Of course, over time, the rate of werewolf sightings decreased until they ceased entirely. However, on the other hand, scientific attempts and explanations for what these people witnessed and what those labeled as werewolves experienced began to emerge and spread. Let's start with the most prominent of these. Explanations: clinical lycanthropy. This is a rare psychological and psychiatric disorder in which the patient deludes themselves into believing they can transform into a wolf and acts accordingly, whether by howling, walking on all fours, or attacking those around them. This fungus, scientifically proven to be dangerous due to causing hallucinations, detachment from reality, poisoning, and more, may have been one of the reasons that led those communities to report strange sightings. It is worth noting that this fungus was one of the most prominent explanations given to explain what happened in the Salem witch trials and the many pathological cases that city witnessed of poisoning, illness, and hallucinations which were attributed to magic, and which is according to various sources. The How Stuff Works website, specializing in debunking scientific facts, put forward two hypotheses for what happened. The first is a hybrid species or pack of aggressive wolves or dogs. Wolves usually do not attack humans, but the existence of an aggressive and hybrid pack, different from the wolves known to those communities, that attacked peaceful villages and their inhabitants, may have reinforced the idea of monstrous werewolves. The other hypothesis mentioned by the website is a scientifically documented psychological phenomenon: mass hysteria. The name explains itself, a phenomenon or creature that appears out of nowhere, and sightings begin to proliferate with the same characteristics and attributes, and most often, Panic prevails in communities experiencing mass hysteria. This may have afflicted European societies during that period. However, the matter was not limited to European societies and the Middle Ages. During a research trip by some researchers to Ghana in 1930, they found that the residents of that area had a widespread belief in human-to-animal transformation. But this time, hyenas were the culprits, not wolves. Yes, as you heard, hyenas. According to the prevailing belief, these transformed individuals are sorcerers who live in isolated areas away from cities and villages. It is worth noting that the subject of transformation into animal form is not limited only to wolves, although it is the most common. According to History Channel, Live Science and others, the transformation also includes transformation into dogs, cats, snakes, crocodiles, hyenas and others. Live Science in its discussion of werewolves pointed out an important detail. Most patients diagnosed with mental illnesses, schizophrenia and lycanthropy delusion worsen and become more aggressive and violent to the extent of attacking their doctors and nurses during a certain period of the month. Research studies, according to the website, have proven the relationship between the moon, can you guess? Yes, during the full moon, and its phases and the mood swings of humans in general. But there is no clear or conclusive evidence or explanation to this day about the relationship between the moon and its fullness and the strange transformations of psychiatric patients, especially those with lycanthropy delusion. Most patients, according to various websites like National Geographic and others, believe in their ability to transform as a result of being wolves or other animals in a previous life. Or in other words, reincarnation. These patients, of course, undergo psychotherapy. Like other mental illnesses, in addition to being treated with antidepressants, mood stabilizers, and other medications typically given for such conditions, these scientific explanations and studies are our next stop. This is also a rare medical condition with many symptoms that vary, depending on the severity of the infection. This disease primarily affects the nervous system, leading to many symptoms such as acute neuropathy, severe convulsions, hallucinations, depression, extreme sensitivity to light, changes in skin color and shape, red teeth, and many other symptoms. Of course, the details of this disease and its diagnosis were not known at the time, during the period that saw the significant increase in werewolf sightings. Therefore, according to what Dr. Lal mentioned in a research paper published in 1965 titled Ombrophilia and Etiology, the sightings documented in historical records about werewolves may have been victims of this then unknown disease. Of course, the matter faced criticism from within the scientific community, as most sightings indicated the person's literal transformation into a wolf. This led scientists to further study, putting forward another hypothesis or medical condition, hypertrichosis, or werewolf syndrome. This is a genetic hereditary disease or a genetic mutation affecting the X chromosome, causing abnormal and dense hair growth over the entire face and body in addition to other symptoms. Most notably changes in the shape of the teeth and fangs. Those affected by this disease literally embody the appearance of a wolf. Although it is a rare disease, many cases of individuals affected by this disease have been documented. Perhaps the most famous are the Mexican family of 19 members, all of whom were affected by this disease, and also that family from Burma whose historical records documented them as being from for generations affected by this disease. Most people affected by this disease in the past were used in circus shows, such as Fedor Jeftichuk, Stefan Bobrovsky, and Julia Postrana, among others. And, of course, we all still remember Sophotris Asaphan, the 11-year-old Thai girl who entered the Guinness World Records in 2011 as the hairiest girl, and who was affected by hypertrichosis. So, my friends, what people saw in those eras was most likely real, and actually happened, and the symptoms of this disease may be a convincing explanation for what history recorded. However, they did not explain the savage behaviors that accompanied the physical description, as those affected by hypertrichosis were not recorded to have any savage or inhumane behavior. Despite the crushing emotional burden they were under and their use as display tools, they were characterized by a permanent and friendly smile. So, science must continue its search, as it also put forward another theory or hypothesis to explain what happened: rabies, or hydrophobia. This disease, whose symptoms have been known since ancient times without identifying its name, source, or even its true nature, was not treated until 1880. This disease affects animals, especially dogs and wolves, transforming them into rabid animals that attack everyone around them. If the disease is transmitted to humans, either through direct bites or saliva from an infected animal, death may be the outcome if the vaccine and appropriate treatment are not received immediately. Rabies symptoms begin with something similar to the flu, and if the patient is not treated immediately, the symptoms develop rapidly, starting with agitation, anxiety, confusion, and hyperactivity, accompanied by excessive salivation, hallucinations, insomnia, and others. And naturally, the infected person becomes violent and unaware of their actions. As we mentioned earlier, the matter may end with the death of the infected person. These are symptoms that may explain the strange behaviors of those accused of being werewolves, but there is no completely conclusive answer to this. The subject of werewolves, with the great popularity it enjoyed from ancient to modern times, made it imperative for the scientific community to research it and offer appropriate explanations that could decipher this phenomenon. Science and scientists, naturally, spared no effort in refuting everything that had been said about this phenomenon. Just like other supernatural phenomena, many explanations and theories were put forward by scientists, most of them of a pathological and psychological nature. Another medical condition also put forward as a possible explanation for these sightings is porphyria. Other theories were put forward to explain the phenomenon of werewolves, other than the pathological and psychological ones. The ergot fungus found on wheat entered the discussion. Of course, werewolves are not the only legendary creatures that history books, stories, and films abound with. The list is long, and at its head are vampires and the undead, or zombies. Vampires are mysterious and controversial legendary creatures, and their history also dates back to ancient times, perhaps to the beginning of creation. And vampires, and will we see wonders in this wondrous world we live in, and will fiction truly become reality? And speaking of wonders, perhaps I should say here that we have fallen many times, my friends, in our lives, and we thought it was over, and that our lives had become miserable, just a count of days. Then we rose and returned to the battle of life. Perhaps you forgot, but never underestimate that rival. Remember that it was also one of the wonders until it succeeded, and be certain that in this world of wonder, anything is possible. So, no matter what happens, do not lose courage. As someone said, if you must fail, be brave and courageous enough to fall forward, not backward. Who knows, perhaps when you fall this time, you will see before you what you have not seen in your best days. Your new chapters will begin. It is a long and complex topic. It will certainly be one of the topics discussed in future pages. Legends mention their existence, and numerous sightings open the door to questions wide open. Are the transformed real, and do they remain anonymous? And were the people who committed horrific crimes under the pretext of being truly transformed? Or did the ignorance of mental and psychological illnesses at the time turn them into victims of an ignorant society where superstitions and legends dominated all aspects of life? Do you believe that these cases, which were hybrid, are indeed medical conditions that science has successfully explained and named? Or, my friends, was it nothing more than a hybrid pack of predatory wolves that caused all this terror and bloodshed? Will science reach a conclusive answer in these cases? Or will they remain among the mysteries of history and our current world? And most importantly, what do you think awaits us in the future? Will these cases reappear thanks to strange and dangerous drugs that easily alter human nature? And will we wake up one day in a world like the one we saw in terrifying science fiction? No one knows. As with the topic of zombies, humans and non-humans at the same time, those creatures we knew from films and stories that portrayed them as humans without minds or feelings. You will be surprised by what you will learn about their origin and the cause or condition that led to the spread of their globally known story, Zombies Attack. That will also be under the spotlight of our programs in the near future, God willing. What werewolves, vampires, and zombies have in common is their widespread presence in horror and thriller films, even comedies and romances, and sometimes they are portrayed as heroes. And other times they are absolute evil. The question now is, in light of the genetic mutations and the development of diseases and viruses, some known and others still unknown, can fiction turn into reality? That is, can we actually witness real werewolves or real vampires as a result of the development of the medical conditions associated with these creatures, or perhaps as a result of mysterious, unethical, and inhumane experiments as for zombies? The whole world has witnessed a large segment of young people turn into zombies. And no, not because of exposure to an attack, a mysterious virus, nuclear radiation, or anything else, but because of a much greater scourge, drugs. Not long ago, social media and television screens were filled with videos of young people wandering, aimlessly acting irrationally, and behaving with strange savagery, attacking passers-by and engaging in acts of vandalism and destruction without any awareness of what they were doing. Moreover, press reports confirmed that these young people, in the throes of their intoxication, felt no pain whatsoever, no matter the cost. Some even caused themselves serious bleeding wounds and were completely devoid of pain sensation, just like zombies influenced with the reason. Unfortunately, is a type of drug whose scientific name is alcohol, as a result of the state that affected young people ingesting this white pill, and their complete loss of mind and rationality, and the similarity of their condition to movie zombies. This drug was called the zombie drug. It is a cheap, potent, and dangerously effective drug, to an unimaginable degree. Perhaps the incident of a Flacker user biting a small child in the neighborhood of Cairo in 2017 was the main reason for the fame of the drug, which caused panic throughout the Arab and Western world alike. Because of this drug, the world was able to see real zombies in every sense of the word. So, will the same happen in the near future? My friends, to werewolves and vampires, will we see wonders in this wondrous world we live in, and will fiction truly become reality? Legends mention their existence, and numerous sightings opened the door to questions wide open. Other transformed real and do. They roam among us, and were the people who committed horrific crimes under the pretext of being truly transformed, or did the ignorance of mental and psychological illnesses at the time turn them into victims of an ignorant society where superstitions and legends dominated all aspects of life? Do you believe that these cases, which were hybrid, are indeed medical conditions that science has successfully explained and named? Or, my friends, was it nothing more than a hybrid pack of predatory wolves that caused all this terror and bloodshed? Will science reach a conclusive answer in these cases? Or will they remain among the mysteries of history and our current world? And most importantly, what do you think awaits us in the future? Will these cases reappear thanks to strange and dangerous drugs that easily alter human nature? And will we wake up one day in a world like the one we saw in terrifying science fiction films? No one knows. And speaking of wonders, perhaps I should say here that we have fallen many times, my friends, in our lives, and we thought it was over, and that our lives had become miserable, just a count of days. Then we rose and returned to the battle of life. Perhaps you forgot, but never underestimate that rising. Remember that it was also one of the wonders until it succeeded, and be certain that in this world of wonders, anything is possible. So, no matter what happens, do not lose courage. As someone said, if you must fall, be brave and courageous enough to fall forward, not backward. Who knows, perhaps when you fall this time, you will see before you what you have not seen in your best days, and with it, your new chapters will begin. So, my friends, this is what we had in store for you about the Transformed. Those legendary creatures that have been etched into humanity's memory since ancient times until this very day. Undisputed protagonists of horror stories and films.